on Refood. Whoa, Claire Smith from Beyond Vegan. No, Beyond Animal, sorry. Vegan is Beyond Animal. Paul Pizzala, Marie Ekeland, and Robert Rubinstein, who will be joining us over the internet. Please come up on stage. Yeah, big round of applause for our heroes. Claire, I'll put you here. Marie, put you there. Gustav there. We're missing someone. Paul? Paul? Are you here?
I'm on Zoom.
Oh, yeah, you're on Zoom. Okay, there you are. Sorry, I didn't see you. Okay, very good then. So, perfect. And Robert is also with us here today. I'll hand out 2 mics to the ladies here. We're here to talk about new investment models. I love this question, new investment models. Because I thought once upon a time there was only one investment model. That was the fund. And the young yuppie went out there, raised a gazillion dollars into a fund. They got 2% every year, 20% of the revenues or the returns, and then that's it. But suddenly I realized that there are a bunch of new funds out there operating in new ways with new models, and boy, do we need this. Robert, I'll start with you because you always set the scene in such an eloquent way when we talk about next-gen business models, and especially when we talk about the ESG out there, which is what we want to achieve. But Robert, what's the status this day of the ESG world?
I hope that you can hear me because the reception here is quite.
But you heard my question, right?
I heard your question. Are you hearing what I'm saying?
Yes, we're hearing what you're saying. I'm not sure that the loudspeakers might melt when you say what you're about to say, but let's go for it.
No, I'm not sure if this session is about next-gen models because I'm the only non-next-gen person on the panel, and everybody else are gens.
No, you're young at heart, Robert. Come on. So, but what's the status right now of the ESG investment?
Or is this about Are you hearing me?
Yep, hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So there's lots of money out there. As I said, there's 4.5 times more wealth than there is GDP, and unfortunately, what we're seeing is massive piles of mountains of money going to massively stupid ideas, sucking out CO2 out of the air through an
Yep, he was censored now by big finance.
Engineering feat when the Earth has been doing it for millions of years by soil, ocean, and forest. So they have actually much more interesting things to say than I do. 4 of them are all investors, at least that's what I was told, and I'm from their bios. Claire Smith, Marie Eklund, Gustav Bromberg, and Paul Pizzala. So I never like to introduce people and read their bios. So if Claire would just briefly, in 60...
I can take over from here. Okay, so as Robert says, loads of money are going to massively stupid ideas. I'll look at the tech team now. They'll have to sort the connection for a while, but we move over to the other ones here because when to talk about because what Robert just said is like the world is not as good as it could be when it comes to financing next-gen models. And
no, I said it was awful. I didn't say it was not as good.
I know, it's an awful
I said it was awful and pathetic and horrible.
Awful, pathetic, and horrible. Gustav, you always say that you cannot fix food unless we fix finance.
Yes.
And at Gullspång Refood, how do you fix that?
We won't fix it on our own, but how I think about it is that we're an investment company like everyone else. We have basically 2 differences compared to a traditional fund. One is that we are an evergreen structure, and the advantage of that is that we don't have to exit at an artificial point in time. That has nothing to do with the company or the market or so on. So we can stay on as shareholders and support the company for as long as it makes sense. And the second one is that, and that's more a for our investors that we don't have a management fee, so we have a budget. So we can't make money just charging 2% of the committed capital. We just finance the resources we need to do our job, and we only make money if we make good investments. So that's how we differ. But in the overall picture, if you look at it from the moon, everyone talks about money as if it's something that exists, that we have a lot of money, but the truth is that there is no money. It's an invention, and a thing we invented and that we believe in. But a tree or a field or a house exists, but the money is totally imaginary.
Yeah.
So it's a system we created as humans, and it means that we can recreate it into something else. And I think we don't have to change that much in the finance system. What we need to do is to align this imaginary system with the real world, so that you incentivize real value and not just playing a game and getting rich by that.
Which is so refreshing, because I don't know if you realize this, but getting rid of the 2% means that getting rid of basically the right to exist for a lot of funds out there, because that's what they live of, the 2%. And sometimes they never turn back the money.
Yeah, but I think there are lots of great funds out there and great fund managers that do great jobs. So it's not that the old system is evil or broken. It's amoral, which is not the same thing as immoral. So it doesn't, you can make money by investing in things that destroys resources. And from our perspective, we have chosen to only invest in companies that drive sustainability, and that's we think it's a good investment strategy, and our investors in Goldspring Refood think it's a good investment strategy to make money as well. But I think in the future, you shouldn't demand from investors to be moral. You shouldn't demand from consumers to pick the right choice in the store, because we can't build a system that is dependent on morality, because I think we're humans, and not all humans will be moral in all situations, and mainly because we can't understand the complex system and make the right choices all the time. We're not capable of that. So the system has to be forcing us to live within the planetary boundaries and to
redesign the system. Yeah, absolutely. Marie, what are you doing? Because you're bringing another model to the table.
Yeah, we have a lot of similarities with Goldspring and the Refood fund. One being that we're also evergreen, and that also have another interest, is that all the LPs are at the same place, or you're also aligning with your own LPs. The other one is that we also have a budget, and we created the governance that the budget is voted by its board of stewards. We don't have financial incentive at the management company level, and so we also align our own financial incentives only on the performance of our own fund and ecosystem, just like what Goldspring and Gustav just told. And we are intentional. I think what Gustav was saying is that you need to be intentional, because money is not just predicting the future. When you're investing, you're not predicting the future. You're an active actor of the society that you are building. You are contributing to change. And even if it's not a conscious choices, I think it's super important that you take that responsibility. And therefore, this intention for us is, our mission as 2050 is to craft a fertile future. And how do we do that? So we just frame the investment strategy as achieving key challenges for 2050, which are how we're going to all eat and eat in a healthful manner, how are we going to take care of body and mind, how are we going to live and produce in a sustainable manner, how we're going to change the education and cultural model in such a way that you can actually have everyone contributing to it, and how can you rebuild trust, both on society level and economical level. And it is holistic, because whenever you look at just even the food sector, you realize that a lot of the problems that are preventing this sector to transition towards more sustainability are linked to the others, are linked to the fact that there's very little insurance companies that are insuring farmers for climate risk, or that very little financial institution that can finance that transition, and that it's not what they're taught at school. So everything is always linked and very much interconnected, so you have to be holistic in the way you understand and invest. And by doing that, and by really being very knowledge-based and understanding what are the problems that we need to solve if we want to have and facilitate the transition of one sector, the other thing you realize is that a lot of these nodes that you're encountering cannot be solved by a business model, right? Because if I just talk about the farmers, the fact that it's not what they're taught at school, where is that regenerative best practices? Where are they, right? It's open knowledge. And this cannot be funded by a company. So 10% of the money that we receive are dedicated to funding these open and strategic resources, commons, that are here to help the transition of the sector, to fund advocacy, to fund open knowledge, to fund research, to fund open data, open tools, because you need that if you really want to create the market shift and accelerate it. It cannot be only done by companies.
Okay, so a couple of follow-ups to that one. So first of all, you say, I have other measurements of my success than returns on investment. How do you sell that to an LP?
The fact that you don't have...
Yeah, the fact that you have other measurements than just return on money.
Well, you have to have return on money, but the way I think people realize that it's a must is that we are living a complete transformation of the economy. You know, I'm coming from funding the digital transformation of the economy. We see the exact same drivers of the current transition, meaning that it's coming from consumers who are changing the way they consume. It's coming from young people who are changing the choices of where they want to work and what they want to work for, and the companies they go and work for, and they want purpose-driven company. They're okay to be paid less if they are working for, so it's coming from the people.
So basically what you're saying here is that by putting those other returns ahead of the financial returns, you actually get better returns because you attract the talent, you attract the ecosystems.
Exactly. I think we're funding tomorrow's champions because we're funding the champions who are actually going to adapt to that transition the sooner to get all these disruption opportunities the fastest.
And the ones just chasing money will be the losers.
Exactly.
Okay, wonderful. Claire, tell us a bit more about what you've been up to lately, because you've launched a new concept called the V Corp.
Yes, well, yeah, that's part of the effort of Foundation, which I set up alongside the investment companies that I created. So essentially I have 3 companies under the sort of Beyond flag, which are Beyond Investing, which is kind of an overarching name, Beyond Animal and Beyond Impact. And then there's the Beyond Cruelty Foundation. The idea was that I didn't feel that we could be an investment company and purely be seeking returns without giving back. And so the foundation is receiving a percentage of profits of all of the companies. And the foundation also has campaigns or projects which are linked to our mission as an investment company, which is to remove animals from human exploitation, which obviously has major impacts in terms of the food system, which is probably where, 99% of the animals are effectively being exploited, or primarily for that, in terms of the vast numbers in industrialized agriculture. So, and that ties into the V Corp to the extent that that's one of the campaigns, I guess I would call it, but essentially it's a collaborative effort whereby we are setting in place a kind of a structure where companies in our portfolio or in anybody else's portfolio, if they are also on this mission or also just simply investing in alternative protein, they can add that additional layer of intentionality around the company to say, okay, we're creating these vegan products. We also want to be, a good corporate citizen. Hence, V Corp, which is a bit like B Corp, but with an extra sort of veneer of vegan. And of course, you can also incorporate within your company's activities, not peripherally hurting animals. So maybe you don't have leather chairs, or you don't put a standard soap in the bathroom, you put a kind of cruelty-free and vegan one, etc. So you can think about it in a sort of more holistic fashion. Obviously, another passion of mine is that people shouldn't put their money towards things that they don't want to happen in the world. So maybe companies should also think about their pension funds as well and avoid investing in damaging industries too. So yes, as I mentioned, a portion of our profits is going into the foundation. The foundation is supporting the efforts of the investment and the companies into which we're investing. In the same way as my co-panelists said here, you can't achieve everything through a commercial standpoint. You also have to think of some kind of aspects of semi-philanthropic or community type of actions in order to achieve the change that you want.
This is okay. So let's go back a bit to the V Corp here, because when you certify yourself as a V Corp or a B Corp for that part, you have to go through some standards, and you have to adhere to some standards continuously. Otherwise, your certification is gone. So you cannot just go out there and greenwash yourself into some sort of a V Corp status. It's tougher than that. But once you've done that, once you've certified yourself as a V Corp, then suddenly you become really interesting for investors such as you, presumably.
Yeah, I would think that it could turn into something like a premium label. Certainly amongst the companies in my portfolio, they're getting the vegan certifications on their products. Some of them have already decided to become B corporations, and to me it seems like a fairly obvious thing to try and tie those two strands together as a kind of gold plating of the B Corp, to say we're not just a B Corp, we're also taking into account our impacts on animals and striving to remove all exploitation from our products, but also our activities.
So you will have, in the future, you will have a whole set perhaps. We have a B Corp, we have a V Corp, we perhaps have a regenerative corp, a biodiversity corp. Is that the way we're going now? No, Gustav, you're shaking your head?
Absolutely not, I hope. I think certifications can be good at a certain point in time to drive change, but in the long run, it can end up filling out a lot of forms, adhering to some criteria that some other people invented. That doesn't really drive value. And I see that also in agriculture with the KRAV and other certifications you can get that can be good in some senses, but then you end up doing some things that are not really good for the overall purpose, but you have to do it to meet the criteria. So there's always a balance, I think.
There's always a balance. Paul, New Foundation Farms. You were the banker in London who changed course a number of years ago. You're now involved in ETHX, which is a ethical crowdfunding platform, and also New Foundation Farm. But when you set up to fund New Foundation Farm, what was your story then to the investors?
Well, I mean, maybe if we take a step back and or a step forward into the future and imagine what a steady state of the world would look like, that is regenerative in terms of its food and farming. So incorporating all the capitals, biodiversity, soil health, carbon drawdown, the water cycle, nutritious food, socially just transition, meaningful work for people in the value chain of food and farming. My question would be, what is a sustainable return on capital? And I can tell you this: it's not 20% return on equity. I don't think we're trying to aim for a future where LPs make a shitload of money and produce a whole load of new Googles in the food and farming world. I think that's not a paradigm shift, that's disruption. And, really, we need to get away from this idea of disrupting the food system to how do we get into a paradigm shift? And in that paradigm shift, the natural or an ecological return on capital is going to be 1 or 2 or 3% real. Okay, so that's where we're heading. In the meantime, we're right at the beginning of the curve, and we need a thriving, elbow jostling financial ecosystem that's going to be able to support loads of different experiments in order to get to this vision of what the future looks like. So, coming back to today, the biggest challenge for new foundation farms was the exceptionally high cost of farmland in the UK. So, we're in this environment where, interest rates were at rock bottom prices, and all asset values have been, highly inflated. So it sort of makes that's a big constraint. So it forces you to think differently. How do I take the value chain away from the oligopolistic market, i.e. agrochemical industry and the supermarket industry, and how do I put all of that value back into my farm? So you've got to start thinking about yourself as an entrepreneur that can use all the knowledge in regenerative farming, the tech that allows you to go direct to consumer. There's a £1 billion market in the UK for farm shops, for instance. So it's small in comparison to the supermarket market, but it's a real market and it's there. So you've got to start employing all these different enterprise stacks on the farm in order to be able to generate a return on equity that attracts traditional capital. That's one end of the spectrum. Where an organization like FX steps in, it's an impact direct to consumer impact platform. So we're looking at returns of capital to our investors of 3, 4, 5%. And what that allows community organizations to do is to buy an asset and farm it sustainably, and it supports their business model. So really, the return on capital aspect in terms of allowing organizations, community organizations, to take land back into ownership and do something positive with it is absolutely crucial to developing that market.
Okay, interesting. So Robert, you never mince your words when it comes to the ESG sector. Like what is it, like 40 trillion US or something that is supposed to, you're nodding here, shaking your head or whatever, that it's supposed to be ESG investments. But what do you think, Robert, if we have more models such as the ones we've been describing now, would this actually...
I think the vast majority, it keeps breaking up, sorry about that. I'm going to turn off my video, maybe that'll help.
Yeah.
The vast majority of investors claiming to be impact investors are mainly unicorn hunters. And if you look at all of the unicorns created in the last 30 years, hardly any of them actually restored the social environmental balance. I have no problem if someone wants to be a unicorn hunter. Just put your MAGA hat on. It says, I don't give a shit. I'm good.
Yeah, you were censored again there.
Going for the 10X. And let everybody know that. About climate, about 1 billion youth unemployment. You better focus on the 2 sectors that will provide the most jobs. And it ain't in tech, and it ain't in food tech. It's in small-scale agriculture, and it's in hospitality. And if you look at the money going into the VC space or the climate mitigation funds, which are substantial, 7.3 billion for TPG, 1.7 billion for Al Gore.
Supposedly an even larger number here.
A fund. But if you speak to Mary Eckley of the other panelists over here, and you ask them, okay, how much have you raised in the last 10 years for your fund? How easy is it for you to get LPs to sign up money. I've known Claire Smith a long time. She's been struggling for a long, long time to get people to put money in this. So you can, yes, there's lots of wonderful startup companies with brilliant ideas, but getting the large institutional money or the large family offices to pony up the money.
It's a tricky question, but Claire, apparently you've succeeded.
Don't make me sound like such a
It's very,
loser,
very tough. They
Robert.
all want to put money.
No, I
I
don't
mean,
Claire, you
it-
cannot
yeah,
deny
the-
this
the
because
thing
I've been
that- I
talking
think
to you
the
for
thing
almost
that's-
8 years.
Ah,
And
Robert,
every
shut up
time I
now.
speak to you, you're always struggling to find money. Maybe you found it now, but you didn't find 7.3 billion.
No, that's absolutely true. The barriers, especially to a new manager perceived as a kind of a boutique, are extraordinarily high. You know, things like, you know, no wirehouse, you know, so no big bank platform in the US will look at the ETF until it's individually over, the fund itself is over 75 or
And not
100
mail.
million.
It's another important
And then the
issue.
house assets need to be over 500 million. So, you know, it'll be a while till we're there. Yeah, there has been some money that's gone into the VC, which did enable us to do a first close.
But
And I'm
in
super hopeful
comparison
that
to
more
what is
comes in.
needed,
But it's very difficult.
It's very, very, very,
is very difficult.
small. And I think we need to say that and shout that loudly. Most of the investors are basically unicorn.
Okay, Robert, you will go over now to Marie. You have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to
Hunters.
comment on that.
Pretending to be sustainable. Al Gore
Ah,
saying we
Robert,
have
now you have to shut up.
1.7
We have to
billion
give
to
the
fix
word
climate.
now to Marie.
Yeah, I was just saying, there's a very simple reason for that, for the fact that it's more difficult when you're innovating in finance to get LPs jumping in or investors jumping in, is because finance is just driven by machine learning principles. It's based on historical performance data. And when
That's
you're
not true. That's not true. Tell me why has $15 billion gone into these 10-minute bicycle delivery services for
well, because the ones who have backed them before made a ton of money.
somebody who's too lazy to go to the corner to buy a surgery? That's just a fad, and everybody's pouring money into this stupid system that doesn't make money. It's just to create data. So I don't agree with you at all.
Okay, Marie, continue.
Yeah, I was just saying, it's based on historical data. It's based on historical patterns. They only can continue on the past trajectories. And when it will not change trajectories if you're always based on funding the same things. So the only way you can really change is by doing what we're doing, is saying we have to be intentional. This is what we want to build. How do we reverse engineering the whole thing and put intention and purpose and new
And
products
then
around
you show that you succeed, and then suddenly the floodgates open, right?
Yeah, exactly. You're creating the new pattern. Then everybody will follow.
That's cool. Do you think you have hope for the future of finance, Gustav?
Yes, I have hope for the future. I think in the end, human beings will learn to collaborate rather than compete, because that's the best way to create value. And I mean, we are lazy. We want to have a good life. And in the end, we'll realize what the best way to create good lives, and that's to collaborate and not compete.
Okay, that could have been the last word, but I will leave you with one last thing to comment on. I mean, all this money out there that Robert is talking about is essentially coming from us. It's our pension funds, right? And what do we want with our pension funds? Is it to hunt unicorns, or is it to build a better life?
Well, it's not only pension funds, it's also sovereign funds giving 100 billion to a Japanese maniac who tried to burn himself in front of
we
everyone
don't
to get a
mention any
license
names
for
here.
telecommunications. So it's not just pension funds.
No,
It's
okay, it's not just pension funds, Robert, but you get the sense. We have a lot of money in our pension funds being handed to
It's
investors
also,
out
you know,
there.
there's a lot of wealthy individuals who just have lots of cash, and they all expect these 10x returns.
I mean, I would say that, you know, pension funds in a way are the ideal candidates, you know, looking for a modest real return. They're the ideal candidates in terms of matching their assets and their liabilities in regenerative farming. You know, if they want to get a 1 or 2% real farm in real returns in an asset, that's going to be around in perpetuity. You know, where else do you go? You go to natural capital, and that's what regenerative
Gustav.
farming is. So, You know, it will take time to get there. We're at the forefront of, you know, developing the business model so that the big, smart, very long-term money can, you know, de-risk. We would need to de-risk it for the big boys, the pension funds, not the Al Gores and all the rest of them. They're just flyboys.
And we should eliminate the words long-term and smart.
Long-term and
They
smart.
are-
Final words from you, Robert. Gustav.
No, I want to return to my original thought. Money is totally imaginary.
They are
doesn't
not.
exist.
They are neither smart.
They can literally move mountains. They're really, really important drivers of change in this world. And since they're imaginary, we can create a new system, and the governments need to be involved in that. And in democracies, we can affect the governments. But as investors, we cannot do anything else than try to lead the way and show it's really profitable to invest in companies that solve big problems. That's what we're trying to do. And then other actors have to do their thing.
Their part as
Yeah.
well. Claire.
Yes, just in some ways echoing that point, the three tenets in terms of my VC are, in terms of position selection, are superior, so superior product, which will cause consumers or industry participants, if it's B2B, to shift. Scalable, in order that not only the company can grow, but the impact can grow as the company grows, because every additional dollar that any company that I invest in makes is a dollar that's not invested in an animal being killed. And sustainable, obviously key. We don't want to replace one problem with another. Provided I stick to that, I have no problem investing in unicorns, because the unicorns are then growing unbelievably large, and I'm having a greater impact.
Marie, final words from you.
Yeah, I think we need to change the pattern and drive the historical data that will make the finance industry move. And that's what we're all trying to do.
New patterns for finance. Thank you so much, panelists, and thank you so much, audience.
They will.
Now, this was actually the last part of this day, and see you again here tomorrow at 9:30, sharp and ready for another day. Okay.